I am immensely proud of my Ukrainian background, but I'm a Canadian. My Jeep is blue on top, yellow on the bottom. The best compliment I ever had was my close colleague, a very famous pediatric neurologist, Fred Anderman, said, "If Ehor is ever cut, he will bleed borscht." My father was not only my hero, but also my mentor. He was a disciplinarian, of course, because of his army background, but he was more than my hero, and he taught me so much. He was born in Budinin, one of 10 kids, all boys, except the eldest was a girl. He was the second born. The firstborn traditionally had to be a priest. The second born went in the army, and that's where he went. Worked his way up as an officer. He went to a musical program and learned how to conduct military bands. My passion for music certainly came from my father, and I was happy to share it with my kids as well. But later on in his military career, and he was sent to the Italian front, where he was promptly wounded, went home to recover in Ukraine, only to see that the Russians were advancing. And he and his brother went to fight the Russians. He needed some money. Came to Canada to make $100. Never returned till he was 75 years old. Made more than $100. My mother was conceived in Ukraine, came to Canada, and was born in Canada. My parents settled in Yellow Creek, a community almost entirely composed of Ukrainian immigrants, and they had a series of businesses. I'm one of 3 siblings, the second born. My brother, Orst Walter Gauk, me, Ehor William Gauk, and my sister, Bohuslava Gauk. Orst was the lawyer, I was the physician, and my sister, Gloria, was the teacher. We spoke Ukrainian, we ate Ukrainian, we went to either the Orthodox Ukrainian Church or the Catholic Ukrainian Church. I never heard a word of English till I went to school. The teacher had to be of Ukrainian background so she could teach us. My first teacher, Emily Solnetsky, lost 2 brothers in the war. Again, one of my favorite mentors. I had many. I was immunized by a doctor who was my hero when I was about 4 or 5, and I knew from that moment that I wanted to be a doctor. I attended the medical school at the University of Manitoba. It's an old school, old tradition, but the emphasis at the time was not so much to teach you medicine, but it's to create a character, a person who could cope with management of the ill. We don't do that much anymore. We teach medicine. I think both are pretty important. Well, in the course of my training, you go through different services. And I love kids, and I love the pediatric service. Then I went on the neurology service. Well, I liked it even more because it was very disciplined. And I said, if there was some way to combine kids and adults, 2 subspecialties I love, pediatrics and neurology. There were 6 of us in Canada when I started.
My name is Keith Aronik, and I consider Ehor Gauk as a mentor and a good friend. I wanted to specialize in pediatric neurosurgery. There were no pediatric neurosurgeons in Western Canada, and very few, probably only one, a pediatric neurologist, that being Ehor Gauk. And I met him on the wards as a pediatric neurologist and a pediatric neuroscientist, and he really encouraged me. He was a well-established, well-respected pediatric neuroscientist and neurologist. So it meant a great deal to me to be able to associate with him. It legitimized everything that I wanted to do, because there was no support from the neurosurgery realms for a pediatric subspecialty at that time.
Medical project Osvita had a very complex origin. I became involved in '92 and continued to be involved for the next 10 years or so. The situation in Ukraine after the Chernobyl event was so desperate and bad. Basically, there was only one solution, and that was education. And the nice word for education is osvita, enlightenment.
I've worked with Ehor for over 25 years. He was concerned about physicians, and I was concerned about nurses in Ukraine. Both of us were from our respective universities in Edmonton, University of Alberta and MacEwan University, and we informed each other about our work. Eventually, Ehor asked me to serve on the board of the Osvita Medical Foundation. I was happy to do so. I was most impressed that Ehor, being a specialist in pediatrics, was able to take the time, or make the time, to take on additional work as a volunteer, and to do so in an environment after the collapse of the Soviet Union that was difficult to work in.
I first met Professor Gauk in Kiev in 1997 during an interview of those who'd like to take part in the project Osvita.
Volodya came from Nikolaev. He wanted to be a pediatric neurologist. He was one of about 200 people we'd interviewed looking for 10. By the time he came for the interview, it was late and dark outside, and I was weary as can be, and he starts off being funny and telling me a joke. You know, hey, you're hired, like boom. And we've been good friends ever since.
My first impressions of Professor Gauk was that this is a man of enormous wisdom and kindness. And by the end of my interview, after a long professional discussion, he said, "Okay, son, we will contact you." Can you imagine? Nobody except my parents called me son, especially after the first meeting.
He's the most qualified pediatric neurologist in Europe. He's done a wonderful job. Still is working through the war and everything else. Running a project Osvita required skills that I didn't know I had. But I was reminded of my mentors, who were tolerant, who were forgiving, who were patient. Osvita tested me on all of those and then some.
I worked as a medical laboratory technologist in Kiev, Ukraine for medical project Osvita for about a year and a half. Ehor was very generous with his time, but he also understood what people needed on an emotional and personal level, and he made everybody feel special, feel like they were an important part of the project, and worked so hard just to try and bring to them education and support for them and their families.
I was the program manager, project manager for Osvita from 1995 till 1999. One of the things about Osvita that I think was so important was it really was about helping moms and kids. And I think there is a nobility about reaching across the other side of the world and helping Canadian doctors doing that, Ukrainian doctors again, taking that chance, that leap of faith to come to Canada. I think it's made a multi-generational impact in Ukraine.
And there's a war on in Ukraine right now. And if you want to measure what Osvita achieved, have a look at what some of our alumni are doing. They're doing because they were with Osvita. They're managing to find medications. They're managing to care for patients. Enough of them to make me very proud. And it's something I had to do. I'm glad I did. I wish I could do more. On a personal note, I lived in Edmonton, which I love that city. I've been married 3 times. I have 3 kids by my first marriage. Third one beats them all. That's my darling Julie. I have 6 grandchildren, all healthy, all bright, all athletic. I've been very fortunate. Julie is my everything.
I first met Ehor when I was a medical student doing a pediatric rotation at the Royal Atlantic Hospital, and he was the lecturer. He dealt with basic concepts in a way that was very understandable, and he used humor a great deal, which helped the medicine go down, and of course made it more memorable.
We both signed up for a very wonderful program the Americans have had for years. It's called a Citizen Ambassador Program. And there were physicians going to visit medical centers in China when we discovered they had a shortage of hotel spaces and asked that those who know each other, would they please share? And we've been sharing accommodations ever since.
Our wedding was in Ukraine in a chapel built into the wall of the Pecharska Lavra. The party was quite the event, with musicians and dancers and food and, of course, drink.
And we're living happily ever after and about to celebrate our 30th anniversary. I built a pool so I could stay in Edmonton and answer phone calls, since I was the only one in captivity doing pediatric neurology. The pool needed a room for the equipment. I said, well, might as well add on a shower and a sauna. So I got a kit and I attached the greenhouse to it. It was empty for 3 years. Changed the scene to Honolulu. I'm walking down this hill one Sunday afternoon, nice and hot, and a huge rainstorm comes bearing down on me. I'm about to get soaked, and a nice little man comes out of the jungle wearing a pith helmet. He says, come in, you're going to get wet. He was the most famous orchid grower in Hawaii. I says, I got a greenhouse. So he sent me some plants. Some of them are still going strong. That was the beginning. Took greenhouse too small, built a bigger greenhouse, ended up with 1,000 plants. I had to clear some space in the greenhouse. Perfect, because the heat from the hot tub also heated the greenhouse. The humidity from the hot tub also added to the humidity which I needed. And the best part, I had a good soak.
It was always great to receive an invitation from Ehor. You knew when you went to his home, he would be wearing his signature Hawaiian shirt. There would be great food on the table, lots of wine would be flowing, and he was just so great at entertaining and just so enthusiastic and fun and warm, and it was just a pleasure to be around him and the circle of people that he drew around him.
My time at Medical Project Oswida, ruined me for future jobs because, little did I know that board meetings did not take place in greenhouses full of orchids, in Hawaiian shirts and hot tubs and drinking wine. But the decisions that were made around those tables by the directors, by Ehor, and the impact that they had on the people of Ukraine, I think is profound.
Watching Ehor through his work with Project Oswida taught me that there are many ways to give back, and one of those ways is financial, but also equally important is contributions that you can make with your time and with your energy and supporting people in need who can use your help and expertise.
Mentoring is absolutely critical because you are basically focusing on an individual, saying to yourself, I would like to be like him. I admire him, I respect him, or her.
You know, I owe him so much. I really do. He's a pretty cool dude.
Never fails that I've always got some project cooking. So I decided to write up the story of Svita. Only to discover that it's not my story. It's the story of those who participated and those who contributed to the project in Ukraine and in Canada. In a society like ours, nobody's rich enough to be sick. Many are not rich enough to be educated. It should be included. So we got a ways to go.
Ehor is the eternal optimist.
Always have been. Hope I always will be. I like to combine it with joy.
Стосовно професора Гаука, я хочу сказати, що він вже давно став мені батьком, який дбає про мене, про мою родину. Він надихає мене своєю любов'ю до життя, до людей навколо, і я відчуваю до нього таку неймовірну вдячність, тепло та повагу.